everyone, and welcome to our City Council meeting. It's August 18th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask our Assistant City Clerk to please read the roll.
Vice Mayor Haddishelt.
Here.
Councilmember Rakucci. Here. Councilmember Mendonça.
Here.
Mayor Bernasconi.
Here.
And Councilmember Albert is absent.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councilmember Tracy Mendonça if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our Assistant City Clerk if she would announce the procedures for addressing the council this evening.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. If you've not already picked up an agenda, they are available at the end of the staff table over there. If you're here to speak to an issue not on the agenda, you may do so under public comment with a 3-minute time limit. As a reminder, the Brown Act does not allow the City Council to take action on items that are not listed on the agenda. If you wish to speak to an item that is on the agenda, you must stay within a 5-minute time limit. Members in attendance may address the council at the podium. There is also a call-in option where comments can be made by calling 916-774-5353. Speaker time limits will be monitored. When the light on the podium blinks red, we'll ask you to conclude your comments. And if you do address council tonight, we would appreciate your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for public comment. Item 5.0, public comments. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the City Council on any item that is not on the agenda? They can come forward now. And we'll also take phone calls. The number is 916-774-5353. We don't see anyone at the podium, and we have no calls. So a closed public comment. We'll move into consent calendar and ask that we hear the procedures for approving the consent calendar.
All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be passed by one motion. There will be no discussion on the consent calendar unless a member of the City Council, staff, or public requests a specific item be removed. I don't know of any items to be removed at this time.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Or anybody at home and wanted to pull anything up?
We have no phone calls, and no one's at the podium. Thank
May I
you.
have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haddishelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci? Yes. Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll move into item 7.1. Placer County Water Agency Middle Fork Project Water Supplies Side Letter Agreement.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and members of the council. I'm Rich Plecker. I'm your Environmental Utilities Director. And ordinarily, this would be a matter that we would typically handle on consent, but given that we're sort of in the beginning, maybe hopefully middle stages of a drought, thought it'd be noteworthy to kind of point this particular agreement out and explain to you what it is. On the next slide, this is a high-level summary of what the side letter does. It recognizes as a credit the Middle Fork project water that we don't use in Roseville in 2021. That can either be water that's conserved by the acts of our customers or water that we pump from the ground. This is water that we would offset from ordinarily using from the Middle Fork project supplies. Last point is that there's really no fiscal impact for this because this is water that we take or pay for. The ordinary provisions of a water supply contract, you pay for what you contract for whether you use it or not. That's just the way things go in the water business. There's another option on the second page that goes into, water that's not used is to our benefit, that's stored upstream for later use, probably next year. There's also a second option in the side letter that says that if the Bureau of Reclamation somehow regains its interest in exploring this concept, it's a concept called rescheduling, where you reschedule your water in a reservoir, that option remains open. The Bureau was interested in this earlier in the year, but in light of the drought and some other things that they're busy with, they said they really didn't have the time to deal with it this year. So on the next page, we sort of mentioned the recommendation, but this is where I'll mention the importance of relationships. Placer County Water Agency is perhaps our best partner in the region. Makes sense. They're from Placer County. We're in Placer County. We're sort of kin, as we like to speak of it. And this is really a testament to relationships that we've invested in over the last 10 years, both at the political level and the 2x2 committees, but also at the staff level, developing trust, developing mutual interest-based solutions to challenging problems ahead of us. So while we would have liked to have included the Bureau in this particular opportunity, we think it's smart to proceed ahead with this and do it between the two of us, explore it, develop the institutional networks and frameworks that are necessary for us to do this in the future. So with that, our recommendation is to approve this letter, and it's enumerated here on the slide and as well as in your packet. But basically, it gives the city manager authority to approve the letter between the two agencies. With that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Plecker?
Just one. So Rick, what it means is that the water that we save this year is going to be used for next year?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. In previous droughts, what we save is lost to us, basically.
Right.
And this year, that's why we've sort of intensified our efforts a little bit, if you will. And the messaging around this is a little bit difficult, if you might imagine, but we've created the pathways to make it to our advantage to save water this year. And it's the first time we've been able to do that.
So what our customers do and what we've done with, our reclaimed water, our aquifer recharge water, we're able to do this.
Yes, we will realize a benefit for that. We'll be able to store that water in the reservoirs in the upper watershed and be able to reuse that next year. So it's not lost, it's not wasted, it doesn't go out to the ocean, doesn't get diverted for any other purpose. It's saved for us next year. So there's a direct incentive to our customers to save water this year.
Sounds good.
That's great.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. We'll take phone calls on this item at 916-774-5353. And if there's anyone here tonight that would like to address this item, they can come forward now. Seeing we don't have anyone and we don't have any phone calls, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for any further deliberations or a motion.
That's to adopt resolution number 21-367, approving a side letter agreement by and between the City of Roseville and Placer County Water Agency, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mayor, the next item is item 8.1. It's a request for council discretionary funds by the Gathering Inn. The Gathering Inn is holding its 4th annual fundraising event called the Gathering for Hope event to be held on November 12th. I have a slide prepared showing other funding requests and disbursements for the fiscal year 21-22. The first one is a community development block grant disbursement in the amount of $15,000 for the emergency overnight shelter. The next one is $15,000 disbursement also from the community development block grant for mental health clinician services. The next one is a request of $75,000 in which they were paid $27,612 for emergency shelter for the homeless, and that was paid by the Citizens Benefit Fund. And then $150,000 disbursement for low, moderate, homeless prevention and rapid rehousing from the Low and Moderate Income Housing Fund. This request is for $5,000. And as a reminder, council has $29,509 remaining in its fund at this time.
Okay. What is the wish of the council? We have a request in front of us for $5,000 for their event November 12th of this year, Gathering for Hope. Are we comfortable with $5,000? Does anyone have any comments, questions? Is there anyone here tonight to speak on the item if there's
I
questions?
believe so.
Okay.
No, I think they've come before us before, I think for a little bit different amount of money, and we've had other organizations having their annual fundraiser, so it seems pretty much in line with what we've done before.
Okay.
I think it's a good
You good with
cause.
that? Good with that? Okay. All right, that works. You want to, yeah, I don't think we have any questions.
Is there?
Okay, may I have a motion to approve a $5,000 disbursement from council discretionary funds for the Gathering Inn for their 4th annual Gathering for Hope event?
Again? So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haddashelt?
Aye.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dave. Okay, we'll move into item 9.1, Human Resources Department update. We have Stacy Peterson, our Human Resources Director. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi, council members. I'm pleased to be here this evening. I'm Stacy Peterson, the city's Human Resources Director. Very pleased to give a Human Resources update. So on a high level, the Human Resources Department's mission is to recruit, retain, and engage a talented city workforce to deliver exceptional city services to the community. We serve 15 departments consisting of 2 major utilities, police, fire, and general city services. This is a complex organization with a vast array of human resources needs and risk management activities. We champion the citywide Inclusion Committee and Recognition Committee. I would be remiss if I didn't start with risk management after the last year and a half, switching to the next slide, because certainly the pandemic has increased the workload for human resources. The HR team has done a tremendous amount of work in responding to COVID-19. Staff quickly developed and rolled out new policies, provided telework guidelines, responded to new COVID-related leaves, and issued an exposure control plan to help keep employees safe. Staff conducted contact tracing for 81 events, which some had few contacts, but some had many. We've had 129 positive COVID-19 cases since July 2020. So the good news is very few were work-related. So obviously our safety protocols were doing their job. COVID-19 resulted in significant increases in workload, as I said, due to employees needing to be quarantined and for us to help with the family-related leaves. We actually processed over 800 transactions related to these employee leaves. Last year, Sutter gave their notice that they were no longer going to provide occupational health services. So when that happened, staff had to quickly put together an RFP in order to replace that service. So in going through that contracting process, they selected Nearsite to treat injured employees, conduct annual physicals, drug testing, and pre-employment physicals. Another important aspect of our risk management work is subrogation, to collect back monies owed for damaged city assets. So this happens when somebody takes their car and runs into one of our streetlights. Previously, an outside contract was used, which resulted in an average collection of about $135 a year. In 2019, we made the decision to bring in a temporary employee to do this work, and she's collected almost $1.4 million in the last 3 years to be able to reimburse the departments for the damaged assets that they had to replace or repair. So this has been a very successful effort. In 2020, HR remained busy recruiting and hiring, considering the essential nature of our services, as noted on the slide. I'll give you an update for 2021 because this isn't a full year, but we've conducted 164 recruitments this year, hired 64 regular employees, and hired 239 temporary employees, so the work has not slowed down. The average years of service for the 47 employees who retired in 2020 was 19.4 years of service to the city. The past 3 years, we've seen 159 employees retire in total. We know that just over 300 employees are now eligible to retire in the next 3 years. We don't anticipate we'll see all of them retire, but they're certainly eligible. In 2021, we've already had 29 employees retire. As an organization, we were fortunate to have the Oracle HRIS system to be able to process our online transactions, so our transition with the COVID pandemic was very smooth. We also changed our employee assistance program to Anthem to ensure our employees were receiving the necessary counseling, financial, and legal assistance during the pandemic. COVID relief legislation required benefit updates, so staff needed to address those. And we also needed to put on a virtual benefit open enrollment event and provide an electronic health benefits guide, which was very well received by staff. We thought you would appreciate learning more about the organization's demographics. The pie chart on the left reflects our gender breakdown. About 60% of our employees are male and 40% female. On the right, our generational breakdown reflects a significant portion of our baby boomers have retired, so we have less than 150 baby boomers left. We've experienced a large influx of millennials and have our first few centennials now joining the organization. We are waiting for updated census data, so we will share the ethnic breakdown of our workforce with council when that's available. We certainly aspire to reflect the community that we serve. The city participated for the second year in the annual program sponsored by a regional collaborative called Innovative Pathways to Public Service, administered by the Institute for Local Government. Careers in Government Day was a multi-day event in April, and more than 500 local high school students listened to City of Roseville employees share about their career and the needed skills for the jobs that they work in. So the students had a chance, 500 students had a chance to learn about the diverse array of services we provide, and hopefully they'll be looking forward to joining our workforce in the future. Hetty Dagan, our Assistant HR Director, who is here, raise your hand, will be presenting about our involvement in this program and the benefits of this successful program at the League of California Cities in September. We have worked to promote a learning culture, and employees are taking advantage of an improved tuition reimbursement program. Participation doubled last fiscal year, up to 50 employees now going back to college to advance their careers. For the Pride of Roseville Awards, all employees who worked for the city in 2020 received a challenge coin engraved with the city's core competencies to say thank you for their essential services. HR also implemented a new learning management module as part of the upgraded workforce timekeeping system that has created efficiencies and will help us track employee protected leaves for like family medical leave, pregnancy disability leave, workers' compensation, and more. Those efficiencies have really saved us. Over the past few years, we've been investing in the implementation of systems to streamline our administrative processes. As one of our current projects, we are working on updates to the benefits module to remove a few remaining manual processes in Oracle. HR staff is also working collaboratively with our IT staff and our stakeholders in the various departments to evaluate performance management systems and more robust applicant tracking systems to replace those. We are preparing to begin negotiations in September for successor MOUs for 4 of our bargaining groups and our management confidential terms and conditions, which expire at the end of December 31st. We also are working on a comprehensive update to our personnel rules to clarify language and create some needed efficiencies in our hiring processes. We have an amazingly talented HR team, and one of our team members, Dave Raw, who's our risk manager, is currently the president of CJPRMA, which stands for the California Joint Power Risk Management Authority. It's our risk pool. And he's working to address significant premium increases being experienced across the industry. For this fiscal year, we'll experience approximately a $1.5 million increase in premiums. This is not due to our losses. This is a reflection of the industry right now. The most significant increase is in our general liability, and the premium for cybersecurity is going up by 345%. Again, this is not due to our losses. We are continuing to support departments with succession planning and providing trainings so we can help prepare the next generation of leaders. During the budget process, we were fortunate to have a new HR analyst position approved to evaluate broader recruitment strategies and implement new tools to attract highly qualified applicants and outreach to more diverse applicant pools. As part of our diversity initiatives, we've trained 181 employees to collaborate inclusively, understand diversity, and harness the synergy of a unified team. And we plan to continue offering this program presented by Jerry Preciado because it was well received by our staff. A racial healing program was championed by Megan Scheid and will continue to be offered. The Inclusion Committee recently supported the development of a diversity and inclusion statement for HR to use in recruitments that will inform applicants that the city values diversity and invites diverse applicants to apply. I'd like to preview our new diversity and inclusion statement tonight so that the community is aware of these efforts and hopefully will help us recruit well-qualified applicants. The statement reads, "The City of Roseville is committed to a diverse workforce. We are engaged in understanding the needs and backgrounds of our colleagues and those we serve. Our organization is unified in this commitment as we believe this produces the best results for our community." We will be including this statement on all future recruitment postings. So with that said, I'd like to share my appreciation for the dedication and resilience of the HR team that they've shown for the organization, which translates into great results for the community. They've done a fantastic job. And I have to point out, the fun of this picture is during COVID, we're working in pods so that we can ensure that we can continue services. And so that's actually two different pictures taken on 2 different days. And so the next slide is fun outtakes from our photo shoot day. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does the council have any questions for Stacy?
I have a quick one, Stacy. I think that's fabulous how you're working with the youth and showing them what different occupations we have in the city, because there's so many different kinds of things. My question is, do we hit like Sierra College, the Roseville High Schools in Roseville? Do we ever go out a little bit? You know, I'm just thinking, I've run into kids that they're not in Roseville, but they might be in Central or East Nicholas or close. But when I tell them about, you know, they could be a pole climber and they can do this, and a lot of them, because I went to my granddaughter's graduation and I was looking at the list where it says where they're going to school. A lot of them were going to four-year colleges, some junior colleges, but a lot of them said work in the workforce. And I just, you know, I've thought about Roseville because there might be some people out there that would like to know even more about Roseville.
Certainly. We have, prior to COVID, started doing a lot more job fairs that were out at the different junior colleges to try and attract more individuals to Roseville. We do believe that our new recruitment analyst will have a bigger impact on doing that outreach to the colleges. We do aspire to create an internship program that's beyond our local high schools. That's where we've started. And so in the future, we currently do use interns, but it's not been a formal program, and that's something that our city manager would like us to put in place. So we will be working on that.
Sounds good, thank you.
Anything else?
I just had 2 things. So you mentioned so far to date, we've had 29 people retire. So
Yes.
that's roughly about 3 people per month so far. Is there a particular area in the city that we're seeing more losses than others?
It's pretty broad.
Pretty broad?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty broad, and sadly, I just signed 3 more retirement letters today. So it's coming, and we tend to see more retirements near the end of the year in December.
Well, looking at the
So-
demographic, that graph that you put up, as far as the age groups, it's not surprising to see that.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say that our former contract with our recovery for damaged assets last year recovered $135?
Not last year, so prior to
prior to
2019, that was the average that was being collected.
There was no zeros behind like 135,000. It was $135?
Oh, I'm sorry if I said that, 135,000.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
on average. Oh, my
You
goodness.
said 135, and I was like, wait,
Yeah.
for a whole year?
No,
I mean,
I'm
we could have
so
gone out there
sorry.
and just pounded on doors and got $135. Okay.
That's what I get for putting 135K.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, because if that was the case, we really.
Yeah, that
okay.
was a problem.
Good, I'm glad I cleared that up. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. There's nothing else this evening. You are definitely in the people business, so keeping people coming through the door. And I see that graph of the generations, which I think is always so interesting. But that lets us know that it's when it's time to retire almost, right? We just kind of keep moving down
That we do.
the. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Oh, you know what? I need to open up public comment for this. Sorry, it's not an action item. So we'll open up public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item or call in? The number is 916-774-5353. And I don't see anybody. It's information only. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will recess for just a minute. We understand that we have problems on our YouTube's channel. So let's see if we can get that fixed and give us just a couple minutes. I've got somewhere to be tonight, an open house. So you're gonna ask away, you can ask all the questions later now? Okay. Oh, that's the quota.
I don't have any questions.
Pick a good one.
I don't have any questions staff hasn't already
Yeah.
answered.
There you go. How old are your kids?
17 and 14.
Okay, thank you. We are back from our recess. We are having technical difficulties with the YouTube channel. So if you're watching through YouTube, there should be a slide that directs you to the city's website where you can watch us live there, and also you're still able to participate remotely. We'll be taking phone calls there to the same number we've been using. There is a 30-second delay or so, so we'll make sure that we wait for any comments. But if anyone's watching, that number is 916-774-5353. So we'll turn it over now. We'll hear item 10.1, the 2021 Housing Element Update from our planners.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Mike Isom, your Development Services Director. With me this evening is Greg Bitter, your Planning Manager, Lauren Hawker, Senior Planner, and Tricia Isom, your Housing Manager. And at long last, we're pleased to present the 2021 Housing Element. As you know, this has been a long, arduous, and complicated process. It's been about 2 years in the making. And before I hand it over to Lauren, I just want to recognize Lauren and Tricia's Herculean efforts to get this across the finish line. It has not been easy. Most cities will contract work like this out. We decided to keep it in-house. We're second-guessing that decision now, but here we are presenting it to you this evening for approval. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, and she can take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Lauren Hawker, and I am here tonight to present to you the 2021 Housing Element, which, as Mike said, is a process that began in 2019 and over the last year involved significant outreach, including news blasts, multiple flash vote surveys, workshops, community meetings, and stakeholder interviews. And the Housing Element before you tonight is the 5th public review version and was a coordinated effort between housing and planning. So before we get into the details of the project, let's talk a little bit about what a housing element is. So a housing element is a component of the general plan, but unlike other elements of the general plan that are updated at the sole discretion of the city, state housing law determines the cycle for updates on housing elements. So housing elements are updated on 8-year cycles and also need to be reviewed and approved by the California Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD. The city's current adopted housing element was adopted in 2013, and so it needs to be updated this year. And the updated housing element will have an effective period of 2021 to 2029. Now, the foundation of a housing element is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. And the city's RHNA and the other SACOG member jurisdiction RHNA was issued in March of 2020 after a year-long process. The city's RHNA is 12,066 total units, of which 6,178 need to be lower income. Now, it's important to understand that we're not required to build 12,000 units in the next 8 years, but we are required to show that we have capacity for that many units. So what does a housing element have to include? So a housing element, the minimum contents of a housing element are described in state law, but some of the key items are included are a review or an evaluation of past programs, so of the 2013 housing element programs, to determine how effective they've been and whether or not they need to be revised. Then there's also a housing needs assessment, which looks at demographic data and population data and other data to determine what the housing needs of our current community is. Then there's also a special housing needs evaluation, where you look at special needs housing groups like seniors, because their housing needs may differ from the general population's housing needs. And then also new this cycle was a fair housing assessment, which is an evaluation of housing choice and opportunity and whether or not that is equitably accessible. And then you develop programs that are responsive to all of those evaluations. And then finally, there is the adequate sites inventory, which is basically a list of sites that are vacant or underused, and it shows what housing capacity is available on those sites. Now, the sites inventory needs to show that we have adequate capacity to accommodate our RHNA, and if it doesn't, then a rezone program is required. Now, all of the major sections listed above are discussed in the staff report, but for this presentation, I'll be focused on the programs and the inventory. So these are just 3 example programs because the housing element includes 36 programs, which cover a wide array of housing issues, from new construction efficiency measures to homeless rehousing. So program revisions generally fall into one of 3 categories. There are revisions for consistency and clarity. Then there are revisions that were made directly in response to the housing element analysis and evaluations. And then there are new programs. And these are basically examples. Each example up here corresponds to one of those types of changes. Now, most of the changes to programs were required by current housing element law or other statutes and/or were in response to comments from HCD and other commenters. And for ease of review, attachment 2 of your staff report provides all of the revisions to goals, policies, and programs. Now, in general, clarity and consistency modifications included adding an objective statement, which is a requirement of housing element law, adding more program details, and making changes to reflect current state laws or city codes and practices. So an example of that is Program 2. The program describes affordable housing projects' eligibility for additional units or incentives, and that's a density bonus. Now, City Council, you may remember, adopted an updated density bonus ordinance in April of this year, and so in order to reflect state changes in state density bonus law, and so Program 2 of the housing element was modified to bring it into alignment with our current ordinance. So modifications in response to housing element analysis generally focused on making programs more responsive to the housing challenges or needs identified in the housing element. Multiple programs were modified to prioritize funding, outreach, or other activities in the areas that would have the greatest benefits depending on the program. For example, Program 20, Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing, includes a number of responses changes. Firstly, in response to comments from HCD and stakeholders, we added metrics describing what the program funds are used for. One such metric is that on average, this program provides more than 37,000 bed nights for people struggling with homelessness. Also, in response to our analysis of homelessness and in response to comments from HCD and stakeholders, we added a monitoring component to track the demographics of people benefiting from these funds to ensure the funds are equitably distributed. Basically, if there's a segment of the homeless population that's underrepresented when it comes to accessing services, then we need to see if we can better connect that population to those services. And then finally, there are new programs. These programs are the result of a combination of new housing element law, comments, and issues identified in the housing element analysis. And an example is Program 16, Prioritize Affordable Housing, which was added in response to comments from HCD and statute related to large affordable housing sites, which are sites greater than 10 acres. The key element is that it commits to preparation of a phasing program that will provide for ministerial approval of lot line adjustments, voluntary mergers, and parcel maps associated with affordable housing projects. This is helpful for all affordable housing projects, but can be particularly helpful for projects on larger sites that might need to be developed in phases on separate parcels in order to make construction financing work. So the purpose of the program, per statute, is to lower the barriers to development of large affordable housing sites, since we do have a few of those sites in our inventory. And speaking of our inventory, so this table shows the final breakdown, both of the city's RHNA and the city's existing capacity. I'm sure you can all see that number in red, but before we get there, let's chat about what this table shows. The inventory needs to show we have capacity in total, which is the final row on the table, as well as in each income category, which are the rows above. The column on the left shows the regional housing needs allocation, so that's the number we needed to hit. And the city's existing capacity shows how much our inventory showed we have capacity for. And so the final column on the right shows you whether or not we have more units than we need or fewer units than we need. But how do we know, since these are not built units, these are units that will be built in the future that we have capacity for, how do we know what income level those units belong in? So the state uses density as a proxy for affordability. So when we're talking about above moderate units, we're talking about typical single family on lots of less than 7 units to the acre in density. And then at moderate incomes, we're talking about compact residential development, townhomes, row homes, duplexes, cluster homes, that kind of thing, as well as some smaller scale apartments and high density residential. And that's at densities of between 7 and 22 units to the acre. And then when we're talking about lower income, we're talking about multifamily housing at 23 units to the acre and higher. So now let's look at that final column, and you see that we have sufficient capacity. We actually have excess capacity in every category except lower income, where we have an almost 1,800 unit deficit. And why is that? Well, so if you look at our total allocation versus our lower income allocation, that lower income allocation is more than half of our total. And when the city plans its specific plans, we're typically looking to have a fairly even distribution between low density, medium density, and high density residential. We aren't looking to have more, or aren't planning to have more than half of the units in every specific plan be apartments, essentially. So I wanted to point this out because the city is actually very proactive in its planning processes, and we regularly produce deed-restricted affordable housing. The deficit we see here is because jurisdictions across the region received a significantly higher allocation of lower-income housing than we have in past housing cycles. So, as I mentioned, we need a rezone program if we have a deficit. So our rezone program is Housing Element Program 14. And it has 4 different strategies embedded within it. First is the commercial corridor strategy, which is new specific plans on Atlantic Street, Douglas Harding, and Douglas Sunrise, which would add capacity for 400 high-density units. Then there's the infill intensification strategy, which would increase the permitted density on existing underbuilt infill sites that are already zoned or designated for high-density housing. The opportunity site strategy would rezone commercial or other non-residential sites to high-density residential land uses. We are seeking to do this on a voluntary basis by looking for willing landowners. For the vacant site strategy, the city would adopt a land use amendment policy to increase the land use density of vacant sites with high-density residential land uses. These strategies are described in more detail in the housing element, but the key thing I'd like to emphasize is that the rezone program is a policy-level document that lays out a plan for meeting the city's RHNA obligation. As the slide states, no housing projects or land use amendments would be approved via adoption of the housing element. We're adopting the program, and then there would be a later implementation phase outlined in the housing element where we would be developing individual projects based on these strategies and coming back to City Council with those. Now, we did prepare an addendum to the city's general plan EIR included in your packet as Exhibit A. To the extent practicable, we evaluated the environmental impacts of implementing the rezone program as part of this housing element. And we did that for a few reasons. And one is because we wanted to examine the effects of all 4 strategies together. And the other is because that will streamline future environmental review when we get to implementation. And the analysis found that all of the impacts were within the scope of the general plan EIR. So as I said, implementation. What happens once City Council adopts the housing element? So first, we submit the adopted housing element to HCCD for a determination of sufficiency. They have 60 days to review it and issue a determination letter. Then beginning immediately after adoption, planning and housing staff will be working together on a monitoring program for housing element program implementation. Each program specifies both a monitoring timeframe and the metrics or objectives being monitored and may include follow-up actions if we determine that the objectives aren't being met. Monitoring will be conducted on an ongoing basis, and the results of monitoring and implementation will be included in the annual reports for the housing element. Also beginning immediately, we will begin work on the rezone program. In fact, as council is aware, the commercial corridors project is already underway. According to state law, we have 3 years to implement the program, and the program itself gives a timeline of 2024 as the due date. Implementing the program will involve further outreach and public hearings, as I mentioned, so all of the rezone strategies will come back to City Council as standalone projects in the future. The take-home message I want to send to the community is that adoption of the housing element isn't the end of this process, it's really the beginning. The provision of adequate housing is going to be an ongoing conversation in the city, and staff will periodically be coming back to City Council over the next 3 years of the rezone program and over the 8 years of the housing element cycle to discuss progress, to implement programs, and to recommend additional actions as needed. So that takes us to the recommendation slide. Planning Commission unanimously recommended that City Council consider the addendum to the 2035 General Plan EIR and adopt the resolution approving the 2021 housing element. Before we move to questions, I'd just like to bring you to your attention that we did receive 1 written comment letter. And the commenter is actually here with us this evening. And essentially, the letter's comments focused on a desire to facilitate housing projects on church properties. And we had a conversation about that, and we're certainly willing to talk to folks about that and think about whether or not there are ways to facilitate that. We don't have time to incorporate that into this housing element, but as I just said, this isn't the end of the process. So we can absolutely be working with stakeholders and community members on other good ideas and ways to provide more affordable housing. Similarly, the Sacramento Housing Alliance did let me know that they still had some concern about the rezone program implementation, the timelines and the sites identified and whether or not we've identified all of the sites. again, that program will be coming back via implementation steps to City Council. So again, there's ample time to continue working with SHA to make sure that as we move through this implementation process, we are coordinating with stakeholders. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Lauren, thank you so much. Does the council have any questions of Lauren?
I do. To follow up, Lauren, with Mr. Nelson's comment, Program 29 allow shared housing under housing voucher for persons with disability. Would this be a program that you might look to for this, or is this very specific? Because it says that it allows people to share housing with non-related people. So would this be a program that you might explore? You might explore Mr. Nelson's interest with?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to provide housing. I think he was specifically, though, talking about allowing the construction of housing or, other housing options on church properties.
Thank you.
Any other questions here before we open up to public comment?
No.
Great presentation, thank you.
Yeah. Like Lauren said, this is a beginning. And so I think and it's very broad, and so we'll be getting more updates as we progress. Thank you.
Lauren, when is this actually due?
So technically, all of the jurisdictions, they were due on May 15th. However, there's a 3-month grace period that ends September 12th.
Okay.
So by September 12th, it needs to be submitted to HCD.
Okay, and then you expect to hear something by the end of the year, before the end of the year? Okay.
Yeah, within 60 days.
Okay. Okay, we'll open it up to public comment now. We'll take phone calls at 916-774-5374. Is there anyone tonight with us who would like to discuss this item?
5353.
I'm sorry, that was Stacy Peterson's phone number. 916-774-5353. Should know that after all this time. Do you want to come forward?
Good evening, council members, staff, and public. I'm Reverend Virgil Nelson, and I'm a resident of Roseville and a member of Placer People of Faith Together, which is an organization committed to working with civic leadership to develop solutions to the urgent needs in our community and in our world. So naturally, we've been concerned about affordable housing and trying to find creative strategies that would help move that forward. Being a pastor, I've chosen to write this down because we often are accused of going off on many side tangents, and I don't want to do that. We really appreciate the ongoing creative efforts that Roseville continues to make in supporting affordable housing projects. Your production track record of over 100 units a year outstrips all the cities in Placer County as well as the county itself. Since I did not know until this morning that I would be able to be here tonight, I did submit written testimony, which you have received, and I won't insult you by reiterating all of those details. Roseville has over 60 churches, many of whom have significant parcels of land. It is PPUFT's hope that the city will be open to enabling congregations who are open to constructing affordable housing and transitional housing on their properties. We at Placer People of Faith Together continue to encourage churches to consider this use of the resources that God has provided for them. The zoning overlay mechanism that we are suggesting is one being proposed in Pasadena for churches committed to a minimum of 50% of their housing units for very low, and moderate income families. Even before this overlay is in place, the Pasadena group Making Housing and Community Happen has 13 congregations committed to projects which, if they are all built out, will provide 1,117 units of affordable housing. That's over 10% of Pasadena's RHNA goals. The Roseville housing element documents a 1,791 unit shortfall in land available for affordable housing, which the rezone program will ameliorate. Why not consider adding mechanisms to the housing element that would guarantee that churches interested in constructing affordable housing on their properties have that possibility without the expenses and delays for zoning changes? There are many advantages to using churches' excess land and underutilized building space. In addition to providing new additional building sites, the sites are often donated, reducing project costs and allowing for the leveraging of funds. There is no cost to the city. There's no reduction in the overall number of sites already identified in the city. And the projects are often in advantaged neighborhoods, which increases cultural and economic diversity, one of the clear goals of the housing element. The zoning overlay mechanism was proposed last year in Senate Bill 899, which passed the Senate and died in the House due to primarily the objections of the unions. Several groups are working to reintroduce similar legislation this year for the state of California. During the Depression, when my father came from Iowa to California seeking employment, he stayed in the YMCAs in San Diego and Los Angeles, and in boarding houses, as well as single-room occupancy hotels. The initial primary mission of the YMCA and the YWCA was to provide a safe place for single men and women to stay as they moved from rural to more urban communities seeking employment. How many YMCAs or YWCAs today have housing for singles as even a part of their mission? You are to be commended for identifying zoning for single-room occupancy hotels and boarding houses in the housing element. And I hope that you will mark them as live options. Lastly, I hope that you will see the value in trying to use more of the empty bedrooms in our community for affordable rooms. PPUFT was thankful to receive startup funding to initiate Home Share American River, which began officially July 1st. Potential hosts and guests are thoroughly screened and then brought together by a matchmaker to facilitate making sure that the expectations and boundaries of both parties are clearly defined. I hope that you will eventually add Home Share American River to your list of housing element resources for those looking for housing. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of our vision and hopes for this community. We look forward to working together to provide a simple and decent place for everyone in our community to lay their head. Thank you. I'd be happy to try to answer questions if you have any.
Mr. Nelson, thank you for your comments, and thank you for being here. It's public comment, so do you have any response? Are we good? Okay. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to comment on this item? Do we have any phone calls? We do not have any phone calls. The number to call, I know there's a delay, and I mentioned it before, but they're 916-774-5353. Okay, with that, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for any further deliberations, questions.
And I was just going to state, Mayor Bernasconi, that technically this is a public hearing item. So at the beginning, you open the public hearing. So also at this time, you close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Close public hearing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment, the housing element, like our multi-hazard, and I can't remember their plan, has an awful lot of information in it, not just about housing, but this has transportation in it. So when these documents, and what an enormous effort on your part, these documents tell how the city operationally governs and tells so much more than the subject matter. So I'd encourage anyone who's watching to look at the housing element or the multi-hazard plan to learn more about our city and how it operates in the various departments. So.
Anything else? Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly proud of the work that the city has done when it comes to not only just housing and overall planning, but especially looking creatively for different solutions for all these different buckets that we have to fill. So I know you've worked a long time on this, and you've done a great job of keeping us updated of what's happening too. Wasn't sure if I heard our clerk. Is she on the phone? Do we have a phone call or?
I think that's a delay. She's watching it on the.
Okay, all right, still 0 phone calls. Okay. I think that we're done with our deliberations. We have a motion?
Okay, the motion is to consider the addendum to the 2035 General Plan Environmental Impact Report, SCH number 20190800418, certified on August 5th, 2020, and adopt resolution number 21-369, adopting the 2021 housing element covering the period from 2021 to 2029. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt,
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendonça,
Yes.
and Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Our next item is 10.2, the Creekview Specific Plan, General Plan Amendment, Specific Plan Amendment, Rezone and Development Agreement Amendment. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. My name is Kenny Shallow, Associate Planner, and I'm here tonight to present the Creekview Amendments Project. The project site is located within the Creekview Specific Plan, or CSP, which is located in the northwest portion of the city, north of the future extension of Blue Oaks Boulevard and along the future extension of Westbrook Boulevard. The CSP was approved in September 2012, and it established the zoning and land use designations for the 501-acre plan area. With approval of the CSP, large lot and small lot maps were approved, and the city and the applicant also entered into a development agreement to establish development obligations for the plan area. The current project is a request for a general plan and specific plan amendment to transfer residential units, revise acreages, reallocate affordable housing obligations, and to establish small lot residential development standards. A rezone is included to amend the acreages of the zoning designations consistent with the map modifications, and the development agreement will be amended to reflect the revised unit counts, acreages, and affordable housing allocations. The Planning Commission approved a tentative subdivision map and large lot and small lot tentative subdivision map modifications as part of the project at the July 22nd Planning Commission meeting. The project included modifications to the approved large lot parcels highlighted here. The different colors represent the existing land use designations. As mentioned, the Planning Commission approved the modifications, which consisted of minor parcel line adjustments to conform the large lot parcel lines to the small lot maps. These modifications will result in minor changes to the acreages of the parcels, which will require minor revisions to the land use and zoning designations to align them with the new parcel boundaries. The project will transfer units from MDR parcels C20 and C22 to LDR parcels C1 through C4. Since the unit transfers result in a cumulative change that is greater than 20% for parcel C20, the transfers are being processed as a specific plan amendment. The overall number of residential units designated for the project area will remain the same, and staff determined the unit transfers will have no impacts to planned infrastructure, roadways, or other public facilities beyond what was anticipated for the area. Other amendments to the specific plan include reallocating the affordable housing obligations. The total allocation will remain the same at 201 units, but the middle income purchase units will be redesignated as low and very low income rentals, and the obligation will be transferred to HGR parcels C40 and C43. And this will benefit the city by adding 30 affordable units in the lower income category of the city's regional housing needs allocation, which, as you heard tonight, the city is working to address a deficit of about 1,700 plus units in this lower income category. In conclusion, staff finds the proposed unit transfers are consistent with citywide policy, and the project is consistent with the goals, policies, and standards of the zoning ordinance, general plan, and the CSP. Consistent with CEQA, an addendum to the Creekview Environmental Impact Report was prepared for the project, and it was determined there were no new significant impacts from what the original EIR anticipated. So with that, the Planning Commission recommends the City Council take the actions listed on this slide, approving the project entitlements. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kenny. Okay, part of this public hearing, we will start with the council first. Are there any questions of staff before I open up to public comment?
No question staff hasn't already answered.
No, pretty thorough, thank you.
Very good.
Okay, we'll open up to public comment. And if there's anyone here tonight that would like to address this item, they can come forward now, and we'll also take phone calls. 916-774-5353. Is there anyone here tonight? And we don't have any phone calls this evening. Okay. I'll close public comment, close public hearing. Thank you. And does the council have any further questions of staff before we have a motion?
Okay. The motion is to consider the second addendum to the Creekview specific plan environmental impact report. Adopt resolution number 21-371, amending the general plan to change the land use designations on certain real property in the city of Roseville. And adopt resolution number 21-372, amending the Creekview specific plan. And adopt the two findings of fact and introduce for first reading an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville, rezoning certain real property in the City of Roseville, and adopt the five findings of fact and introduce for first reading an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville adopting a second amendment of the development agreement by and between the City of Roseville and Anthem United Creekview Developments Limited Partnership relative to the Creekview specific plan, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Haudashelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Akuchi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All. Okay, we'll do one last public comment this evening. If there's anyone here tonight that would like to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda, you can come forward now. And also, this is time to call in for public comment. Our last public comment of the evening, 916-774-5353. Do we have anyone here tonight? No? Okay. We have any phone calls? We have 0 phone calls. All right. That closes us out. We'll close public comment. Does staff have any reports to share?
No further staff reports, Mayor.
Nothing
Counsel?
to report.
Not for me.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. We have a phone call? Can I reopen public comment?
Yeah, I think
or-
because of the 30-second delay, we can reopen public comment for that.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have at least one phone call, if you want to put it through. Thank you. Is it 5 or 3?
Thank you for calling the City Council meeting. You may make your comments now.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for getting me in with the delay. This is Lisa Larkin, and I just wanted to mention that I would like to see the COVID reports coming back to the agenda, if that's possible, since the case numbers have increased to a level that they were, months and months ago. I think that should come back, so that we should get the COVID briefings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other calls? No other calls. Okay. So close public comment. the council doesn't have any comments. I don't have any further comments. I'd like to have a motion to adjourn. I know we'll be back here September 1st.
Move to adjourn till the September 1st meeting at the appointed time.
Second?
All ayes?
All ayes.
All right. Thank you.